at the meeting, can you please be quiet? Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Good evening. We are the West Street Committee, and we're excited to be here to share our progress and provide as much information as possible about the ongoing West Street building project. With us tonight at the table is our OPM, our Owner's Project Manager, Neil from CMS, and Tim Woodman, our architect from EDM Studio. Together, we're here to answer any questions you might have about the work we've done since the December 23 special town meeting. As you may recall, at the special town meeting, the town agreed to fund the renovation of the West Street building for municipal offices, a senior center, and future programs in the amount of approximately $5.7 million. This figure was based on preliminary assessments conducted by our committee in partnership with subcontractors, engineering firms, the building inspector, the fire chief, and state regulators. We focused on identifying the key needs, that is, ensuring the building's safety, removing hazardous materials, adding a fire suppression system, updating the HVAC system for energy efficiency, and replacing windows and doors. We did not have funding to do an in-depth study regarding the electrical, plumbing, or HVAC systems, so instead, we added a contingency of 20% to cover any of the unforeseen and miscellaneous costs. Starting in January, after the special town meeting, we immediately began the process of selecting an OPM and an architect as required by Massachusetts law. We also began addressing some of the necessary work, such as removing the oil tank, which was required by the DEP, and meeting with town departments to assess their space and storage needs. Once the OPM and architect were on board, our architect immediately dove into an in-depth evaluation of the building, conducting the appropriate building conditions and site studies, and completing an existing facilities assessment. Those were tasks that were beyond the scope of what our committee could do previously without a formal budget. Through several months of detailed planning, meetings with departmental heads, and refining the design options, our architect presented us the first draft of the West Street building renovation. After multiple drafts and revisions, which were caused by exploring space allocations regarding what fits where and who best can be served in what spaces, and by reviewing the building's condition report and analyzing the schematic design cost estimates, all that was done fully knowing our funding constraints. The committee presented to the select board for consideration 3 renovation options with the costs before proceeding to our next phase, which is getting firm bids. Ultimately, the select board approved a full-scale renovation of 22,000 square feet of the building. This renovation cost is including abatement of the planned occupied section of the building, new windows, a new fire suppression system, updated and improved accessibility, ventilation, plumbing and electrical services, and updated finishes. Approximately 12,900 square feet will be municipal office space with community meeting rooms, and 9,400 square feet will be for the Council on Aging. Additionally, the select board agreed with the committee's recommendation to include the abatement of the unoccupied section of the building. This decision ensures that the entire building will be abated and outfitted with new windows, preparing the remaining unoccupied space for future renovation. So for an additional $1.2 million, all the hazardous materials will be removed from the building and new windows will be installed throughout, bringing the total cost of the renovation to approximately $15.7 million. Now I know this is significantly higher than the $5.7 million estimate that we presented in December. And I want to be clear, we have put in an enormous amount of effort to minimize costs, working closely with our architect and OPM to come up with the most cost-effective plan. So where did these additional costs come from? First, the square footage of the project increased by 30% from what we originally thought we were going to renovate back in December. This change is based on programming discussions that we had with department heads, industry standards for space needs, and aligning the design with the building's capabilities. Another major factor in the cost increase is compliance with Massachusetts building codes for accessibility and energy efficiency. Because the renovation cost exceeds 30% of the appraised value of the West Street building, we are now required to upgrade the facility to meet ADA requirements. Additionally, Mass regulations require updates to the existing heating and cooling systems, which the committee could not anticipate without the field studies the architect conducted. Those required updates include a new heating and cooling system and ventilation upgrades. Those changes then necessitated an electrical service upgrade to support those new systems. So the plumbing and HVAC changes are estimated to cost approximately $3 million, while the complementing electrical service upgrade is estimated to cost a little over $1.8 million. While the quotes that the committee was able to obtain in '23 were accurate, it was the unforeseen costs, the quotes the committee could not anticipate without doing a formal study, which contributed to the increase in the renovation expenses. We are now in the process of preparing bid documents to obtain firm numbers for all those anticipated building upgrades. While we expect the final cost to be less, we don't have any definitive answers until the bids come in. Before I open the floor to questions, I'd like to address a few that I've received since we posted this meeting. First, the question is, can't we just stay where we are and demolish West Street building? What would be the cost associated with that? Through cost estimates, we have determined that to demolish West Street, we first have to pay off the balance of the bond of the roof that was updated before we abandoned the school. We currently still owe $160,000 on that bond. In addition, the cost to abate and raise the 44,000 square foot building is estimated at approximately $2.9 million, with an additional $75,000 required for backfill. As for the annex, we currently pay $2,200 a month in rent. Our lease expires in June. Annually, we spend about $10,000 on electricity and heating, along with an additional $9,000 for lawn mowing, trimming, leaf removal. These costs don't include snow removal, sanding, ice melt applications. We also pay a weekly cleaning custodial cost, which computes to approximately $8,300 annually. So in total, for the annex, we are paying $54,000 in operational and rental expenses. The owner of the annex has decided to sell the building, so we will not be able to rely on renting that property. What about buying the annex? Several years ago, the asking price was $400,000. But with changes in the market since then, the cost has likely increased. The town turned down this offer because the building did not meet the needs of our municipal offices for storage and space. Our space requirements have only increased since then. Also, in addition to the price of the building would need to be updated to meet current building codes and ADA compliance due to the change in use of the building. So given those factors, buying the annex is not a practical long-term solution. What about this building, the COA? If the renovation is approved, what happens here? The plan is to sell this building and apply the proceeds to any bond that we secure for the West Street building. Currently, maintaining this building costs us over $49,000 annually, covering expenses like electricity, heating, water monitoring, alarm system monitoring, pest control, among others. So selling this building will provide us with funds to help pay down the bond And it will also generate property tax revenue, which will contribute to the taxable income for the town. Finally, if you approve the additional money for the West Street renovation, how is that going to affect your taxes? In the brochure that was by the door, there's a chart in your handout which outlines the worst case scenario if we bond $10 million. However, we do not anticipate needing that high of a bond because we plan to request that the town reduce the bond by utilizing funds from our various stabilization accounts and free cash. So ideally, we hope that at town meeting, they will approve these transfers, bringing that total bond down to 7 or 8 million, depending on the amount that's allocated. So that will reduce your potential tax impact that's shown in that chart. So with that, I'll stop talking and open the floor to your questions. I hope that you see this renovation as an investment for the future of Granby. So I open the floor now to questions. If you have a question, it'd be best if you could come to the microphone so GCAM can hear you. If you can't come to the microphone, I'll repeat the question. Oh, you want to be a runner? Okay, great. Thanks, Crystal. Who has a question? You have to state your name, please.
John Robert, South Street. The additional space that's put aside for future, would that accommodate the central office of the school system in the event that the high school is ever renovated? Because I know that MSBA will not reimburse for central office space. Is that something that was considered by the committee?
It has the potential.
It has a space potential for it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious about.
Can you say your name and
Hi, my name
address?
is Craig South Street. I'm Craig Judicki. I'm curious about what building upkeep would be like, because if half of the building is sitting empty, what is the situation in the future going with that? What are the plans for that? And how much would the cost be for just general upkeep of the building?
We are currently upkeeping the building. It is temperature controlled, so we do currently have those things in place. It's not going to differ much from, the unoccupied side would not differ much from what we're currently keeping it at.
First of all, thank you for the entire committee for all the work that you've done. I really appreciate it.
And you are?
I'm Greg Leonard. I'm here with Brian Hochschild. No, can't sell it, can I? I don't know, and this brochure doesn't tell me if we've taken consideration of available space for our committees to meet and store their records.
So in the back of the brochure shows, the second to last page, shows the current layout of the, and it's on the big poster board over there, which shows all the different office spaces and the meeting spaces for those municipal offices, in addition to some meeting rooms that can be used by the public. The cafeteria, the current cafeteria, would be another shared space for meeting. Anywhere else?
The gray area between the town clerk and assessors.
That's a vault.
And then, okay, and then for storage, there's a vault between the town clerk and the assessor's office for all the storage, and there'll also be storage in the basement.
Terry Johnson. I'd like to know what's going to happen with the Carnegie Library,
What's going to happen to the Carnegie?
the old
That's
Carnegie
a water
Library that we're using
Yeah,
now.
I don't know if we can answer that question, because our committee, that's not a question that our committee would know about. Are you asking if we can use it for?
What are we going to do with it? Are we selling it like we're selling this
That's not
building?
I don't, that's a question for the select board, I'm sorry.
Okay. Select-
Crystal?
Crystal Dufresne. So we have not talked about the Carnegie Hall. That is a possible solution that the select board is looking into for office space, office space right now, depending on if we end up going with keeping the annex for the time being while this project is being done, or if we move the town offices over to the old library to save money while the project is occurring. Temporarily, correct. So there was no talk about us selling that library space, and currently right now the town accountant and the building maintenance, Jeremy Carrier, is in there. So that's where their offices are right now.
Lisa Petralia, 6 Common Street. I have 2 questions. Can you
Could you put the mic to your mouth?
Yeah, let me take the mask off. Can you tell me what was the source of the 30% increase in the square footage to help the price go up? Was it larger space for certain town functions?
Can you guys answer that from an architectural standpoint? Yeah. Yeah. Go.
Hi. So essentially, the 30% is based off of 2 main factors. One is going through and doing a robust programming session, essentially interviewing every single department in the town that would be going into the building, talking about who their current staff is, workstations that are required, as well as potential for growth and their file storage needs. That was all considered and built into using current standards in terms of space needs for office space for each of the individual departments. As Lynn noted as well, part of that too is based on really working within the fabric of the existing building to minimize the amount of demolition and reconfiguration we were doing. So to that end as well, there's a certain amount of growth that happens with that in terms of optimizing it to the space that's there.
Okay, second question is, can you address the $1 million commercial kitchen that's being talked about and how it might be linked to allowing the town to apply for a rural development grant? And is that a matching grant? And do you get at least $1 million back if you invest $1 million for a commercial kitchen, and for what end? Thank you.
Well, I could do know what I need. Well, the grant application is to put, it is for community usage. That's the whole point of the grant, is to put it into other organizations can utilize Serve Safe Kitchen if they have activities, because as we know, it's required for a Board of Health when you bring people in from outside that's not part of your organization, it has to be Serve Safe. And it's a process of the grant of, like all the other grants, you have to fund the service and then we get money back. We're right now in the process of, I just put in an application of interest. We're still working on that.
And Lisa, it's not $1 million grant. It's, we're estimating it'll cost $1 million to get the kitchen up and running, and then the rural development grant will come in as what they see Granby needing. So that application has been started.
But it's not contingent on putting the kitchen in. You just want the kitchen and then you're going to try and get a grant?
No, we have to show them that we're putting the kitchen in to get the grant.
That's what I thought. Okay. Do you know how much you'll get?
We have no idea, but no.
Yeah.
No.
John Matthew, 288 Taylor Street. You were mentioning that the June annex,
Put it up to your mouth.
come June, I'm sorry, it's going to be up for renewal or something, right?
No, well, our lease expires in June.
Okay, it expires in June. This renovation won't be done by June, so what's your plan for the annex? That's one question. I have another one.
Go ahead, Crystal.
I'll answer that one. So we currently have a meeting on Monday where we're going to discuss the options. So I can't really give you a final answer on that yet. But if we stay in the annex, we would have to pave the driveway. That is a contingency the owner is asking for, which is around $40,000. but we wouldn't own the building. And then the rent is $2,200 a month. But come June, if we're not out, the rent doubles to $4,400 unless we extend the contract for another year. And she's not guaranteeing she's not going to go up in the cost of the $2,200. She wasn't able to tell us at the last meeting that we had if she is or isn't. So that is a decision the select board has to make, which we will be discussing on Monday. So I can't answer or give you a final decision. We haven't made that decision yet. We are just looking at all our options.
Have you done any work on anticipating that being there? Have you searched places to put the people? Okay. Second question, if this 10 million thing is rejected, then what?
That's the good question.
Well, you should be anticipating, correct?
Then we have an annex that's going to... Go ahead, what? Someone wants to answer that?
No,
Oh.
Someone's being funny?
We'd have to start looking at demolition of the West Street building.
So, yeah, we have to demolish West Street building. We'd have to look at what we're gonna do with the people in the annex, where we're gonna fit people. Perhaps you put them all in here.
Okay, you have 3 months to...
That's not what we want at all, but we only have so many buildings in town that we can use.
All right,
The
yeah.
annex won't be ours, the Carnegie is limited, and so we have the COA.
Have you done some exploration on what to do?
That's not our
That's not
committee's
us
job.
again. That's not
That's
our
not
job.
the committee's charge. The committee's charge was to research West Street building and what the choices are for that building. So what the options are. So that charge is put on the select board, which again, we will be discussing on Monday.
One other question. You were mentioning taking down the West Street School, if this is rejected, right? Have you...
On here? Go ahead.
Yeah. Have you, don't laugh at this, but have you done any work on getting another use for that school?
All the upgrades would have to be done.
All the upgrades just still, it comes out the same.
Okay, the reason I bring it up is, in August of 2023, the state of Massachusetts, I can't underline this anymore, they are desperate, absolutely desperate for housing. The lieutenant governor was on TV and said, any residents in Massachusetts, if you have room in your homes, would you please accept these people?
So,
Now,
okay,
let me finish.
we're going outside the scope
No,
of this project?
the scope, what I'm saying is, that's another use for the West Street School.
We
Yeah, but
were
that's
asked
the
for
board.
municipal office use, how we could use that building.
Yeah.
Not anything else, so that's a question, again, for the select board and outside the scope of this
Okay,
meeting.
well, like
So-
you said, you wanted to dismantle the West Street School, and I'm saying, don't...
No, I didn't say we wanted to, we said that's an option.
Okay, it's an option. I'm saying, don't take it down before you contact the state of Massachusetts, because they will scoop that up in a half a second. They need housing.
All right, thank you.
Just an idea.
Jim Petras, maybe with a simpler question. How much of the $5+ million approved at town meeting has been spent on this project to date?
It was only what we paid, right?
Yeah.
So the monies that have been spent so far are what we have paid our architect and our OPM, which is about $150,000 between the two of them.
And 15,000 for the oil.
Oh, and $15,000 for the oil tank.
Dave Cody from Cold Hill Road. Couple questions. One would, I heard you talk about the asbestos and abatement lead. Did that include any mold? Because I've worked on old buildings, and a lot of times there's mold hiding in places you can't see. Did you guys do a study about mold in the building? It's the only concern I'd have to be a surprise could increase cost.
We had a state study at one point checking the air quality and the building quality, and it was fine.
Yep, I have that.
Recently, within the last year and a half.
Well, the only concern I'm going to let you know is that when you got an old building that's been sitting around, mold could have grown in places where insulation.
It's not just sitting around.
It's not sitting it's vacant, but
Okay,
it's
all
not,
right.
it's being utilized.
Well, just be careful that if you haven't done a study on the mold, something you might want to think
We
about.
did have someone from the state come in and do air quality.
Air quality?
Yep.
Okay. And state funding, I see here we're at the $10 million I was involved in when we built Chicopee Comp, and we got big reimbursement from the state. I'm sure you did with the school you built. Is there any state funding available for this project?
Well, we're talking to the senators
We've talked to our representatives and our senators, and we haven't heard back, but they seem hopeful that they will find money for our project.
Okay, yeah, it's usually.
We last had Representative
Normally they'll
Gomez
match
here.
you some of the funds, a certain percent of the funds that you spend as a town. So there's no programs currently in place you're trying to apply for them. Is that
No.
correct?
Some of the grants we've looked at so
Oh,
far,
well-
we have to have a commitment to say we're doing the project before
Right.
we can actually, if we fund it, then we can start applying for different grants.
Okay. I don't know, municipal buildings are different than schools. There's a certain reimbursement that does, it must
Different.
be different.
Municipal and schools are totally different.
Okay. Last question is new construction versus the rebuild. So normally we do a cost analysis on that when we're doing projects. Have you done that cost analysis? In other words, your architects, if they've done a cost analysis of the same square footage you want to build, what it would take for new construction versus this project?
All right, so we've looked at both the renovation as well as new construction, both with discussion amongst the full committee as well as with the OPM and talking with our cost estimator. Essentially, based on programming, we're landing around a 22,000 square foot structure. And where we are right now with renovation, based on the 15 million, if I remember correctly, we're roughly around $550 per square foot. To build new with today's construction costs is approximately $1,000 square foot. So to do the same structure, you'd be looking at somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 22 million.
And that's just construction.
Yes.
Not moving the building.
Okay, my name is Gloria Vivier, and I live at 31 North Street, Granby. And I've been associated with the Senior Center for many years, probably over 20, doing a lot of volunteer work. And before I came here tonight, I checked the square footage of this current building that we're in, and it's 44,000 square feet. 4,400. Whatever, 1,000 sounds better, guys. Anyway, you're talking about putting the Council on Aging in 9,000 square feet. Is that going to allow them to have their food pantry, their clothing, the library, the meals that we serve every day, and all the exercise programs that are being currently held here? Is that going to be, where are we going to put them? Everything that I've just listed. And that's just part of our affiliation. Thank you.
So it's mixed between your dedicated space, which you can see in the two classroom spaces along West Street itself. We have the food pantry built in there, as well as the shop and the library space, as well as your office spaces. The cafeteria essentially will function as similar to this space you're in currently, your activity space. We are anticipating a folding partition in that space, which would allow it to be subdivided into two spaces that could be used simultaneously. Right now, that space on its own, without any subdivision, is about 3,000 square feet. The space you're sitting in today is about 1,800, give or take. Each of those individual spaces, when you put a partition in it, one is 1,600, one is 1,500. You also have the gym, which is across the hall, which can be used for exercise and for activities. These spaces are noted when you look at the plan. You'll see their diagonal crosshatch because the intention is just like this space here. It would be common space that can then be used for town functions as well.
Jeremy LaPointe, 70 Chicopee Street. I think the problem that I'm seeing here is that we're going to ask the constituents of Granby to vote for an override for town offices, basically, when the high school has been suffering for years, and we've never, I mean, I don't know how many millions of dollars we spent on feasibility studies to make the high school, renovate the high school that we've done nothing with. Yeah, we're going to do an override for $10 million for town offices, and I think there should be another option. I think the reality is, I think we could probably demo that building for $2 million or less. I'm sure if we brought Associated Building Records in.
We have a quote from them.
Okay, so let's say it's 3. Let's say it's 3, and we got $2.2 million left. Why don't we just build town offices for $2.2 million? Keep it under 5,000 square feet, so then we don't have the, it would be assembly use 3, so with no fire suppression. It would be slab on grade. We don't have to deal with the high water table over there, the moldy basement. The building would be far cheaper to maintain
So
over
Jeremy,
years.
there's a lot going on there,
Yep.
but first let me tell you, for fire suppression, we have been told by our fire chief that because it's municipal offices, you
don't
need
have to.
fire
That's not
suppression.
true.
Well, that would be,
Massachusetts state codes.
that's an interpretation that you have and he has.
No,
For
listen.
our committee, that is what he has told us.
Okay, so I'll just tell, under 5,000 square feet with an occupancy of less than 300, you do not need a fire suppression system. And we could take that to the state and we would win that. That's not something that the fire chief could mandate and make happen. So I'm just saying there's definitely cheaper ways that we could do this without borrowing any money and asking for an override here. We could, the Council on Aging, we could keep this building the way it is, and we could make another building, which would be brand new, energy efficient, which would cost the town far less in the 20, 30, 40 year, and everyone gets what they need. I think, to me, that makes the most sense, and I think when this goes to vote, I think that's what most Granby residents are going to think. And so if we continue to spend money on this project and it goes nowhere, just like the $1 million feasibility studies that we pay for the high school, it's just money being thrown away. We could take action and we could do this quickly.
The town hall is this.
Okay, so, Jeremy, if I'm understanding correctly, what you were asking is why we just didn't build like a 5,000 square foot building.
Like a 5,000 square foot, like 12 offices.
Okay, so this building right here is 6,200 square feet.
Yeah.
And that is not big enough for our departments. We would still have to deal with the annex.
Right, so how big is the town annex?
So the town annex is
2,500 square feet?
2,300.
Okay, so basically just take everything that's in there and put it in 5,000 square feet.
And
you mean it, I'm.
Right, so, I mean, out of this office, you take the upstairs, which is not ADA compliant, we put it in a 5,000 square foot building. That way there's just no ramps, no elevators, no fire suppression. We build a 5,000 square foot ranch style building. Keep it small, easy to build. Contractors in town could build it. We wouldn't have to use prevailing wage because we don't have to borrow money. There's no mandates from government money. We could do this far, far cheaper.
not in today's standards.
I do this for a job. This is what I do. I can tell you we can do this cheaper. Right here.
I believe, to answer the question on prevailing wage,
The problem is I come in here to pull permits all the time, and I see the senior center, and they don't even take up half the building in here.
Okay, can we let the question be answered before we start to go down the rabbit hole?
Order. If you would like us to answer the question, sir, we can understand. Let us get time to answer his question, and then we'll address other people if they have concerns. Raise your hand, and we will answer your questions.
to the question on payment of prevailing wage, if municipal funds are used to pay for the construction, then prevailing wage is a requirement of state law. It's not debatable.
So the money that we have comes with it. So that's subsidized money.
They're saying municipal money,
It's
meaning
municipal
taxpayers'
funding.
money.
Still, I mean, that's what I mean, we're still building a 5,000 square foot building.
Which isn't enough for what our town needs and for future growth.
It's not even this square footage.
Terry Johnson, and I have a comment to make. Do you know that the town of Granby has 1,004 people over the age of 70? This building is too small. We cannot do what we want here, and it's outdated, and that's not an option of putting more in this building. That's not an option. You're not here. She's here all the time. And we have all of those, we only have 895 children in this town, but we have 1,004 over the age of 70. And if you want to count senior citizens, they start at 60. So this is not an option to put more here. We need out of here.
I think you're back to my point perfectly. I think the problem is, yes, you're saying that we have an older population, and the reason why we're not getting the young people in this town is because we don't have a lot to offer with our high school. I think if you want younger families that are going to grow in the town, you have to give them the options that they're looking for, and they're not finding it here. So what you're saying is that our town's going to get older and older with people who are on fixed incomes, and their tax rate's going to go up, and they're not going to be able to afford to live here. No, I'm not saying, but I'm saying there's other options.
Excuse me, we're going to have to stop this back and forth because we're here to answer questions about what we are proposing, not unfortunately what you want to be done. You want a new high school, that's a different discussion. So we're going to move on to different questions now. Mr. Petras?
Jim Petras again. On the diagram, the gray shaded section, which is the West Street wing and the oldest part of the building, the initial West Street, what is that going to look like if this project goes to fruition? What is that going to look like when finished?
It's not going to, it's going to look like it is right now. You're talking, Mr. Petras, like this part?
With new windows and doors.
Yes, so it's basically going to be the existing with new windows and new doors. We aren't doing anything in that section at this point because we, other than the abatement and the windows.
Well, we can't afford to do that part of the building.
We would have loved to have explored that possibility.
That's all for future growth. That's why we're abating that side, changing the windows, changing the doors, so we can have a progressive future for Granby, and we're all prepared for it, for any future use.
Rich?
Rich Demaraki, Bachelor Street. First of all, I have a comment. We were told at a special town meeting by your group that the building would cost $5 million. It would not raise our taxes 1 penny. That was not true. Now you're asking for $10 more million for a total of $15 million. That's over a 200% increase. Now, the average person will pay between really $300 and $350 in taxes every year for 25 years. That's a long time.
If it's a $10 million bond.
Correct. That's what the paper says, $10 million.
That's the worst case scenario. We don't anticipate that. We anticipate probably an $8 million bond.
Well, you anticipated a $5 million project.
What?
You anticipated a $5 million project, too.
Too many people.
But I just want to comment, we kept hearing about an override, but someone told me that they didn't hear the word override once in this documentation. Now, if this gets approved at the special town meeting, does that require an override vote where we have an election and people vote on it?
Yes, it goes to the ballot box.
Okay, what makes it an override? Because we have a lot of bonding. We bond for trucks, or we bond for many different things that are not an override. Is it just because we don't have the $10 million in total in all accounts together?
It has something to do with that.
It's the tax.
The tax base.
Debt exclusion. Yeah. It's outside.
Yeah.
2.5%.
You want to say it?
So, Rich, this project, if approved, goes outside our 2.5% tax debt ceiling.
Right.
So that is where the override comes into play. We cannot tax over that unless the residents agree to it.
But you're saying if, let's say, the highway department finances a truck or a new roof on a school, why does one of those require an override and one doesn't? That's my question.
The amounts, really.
The amount?
The amount is where it comes down to.
Because if you added all the accounts Granby has, we don't have $10 million by far. Now, you want to take $1 million out of free cash, which I don't even know if it's set, how much is in free cash this year, is it?
It's not set yet.
Not set
Okay,
yet.
not set yet, so you don't even know whether there will be $1 million.
We can presume how much is going to be in there, and it's more than $1 million.
Okay, we'll see. But you also want to take $1 million out of the stabilization funds. That will bring it down to close to wiping it out.
Yeah, we
So-
currently have 2 stabilization funds that we could ask.
Right, which you are planning to do, correct?
Well, that's not up to us, that would be up to our town administrator.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Crystal. Crystal,
Yes.
we have a question up here.
Doesn't it say right here it's going to a town-wide?
Anthony Serini, 3 Cedar Drive. Could you address, I know that you're saying the $10 million fee, total cost, but once you get the bids, the quotes for the project, what's the process for you to do line items to reduce that? I thought I saw something in one of the meetings that you were going to consider changes to the overall project. And then the other question or comment is, what happens to the ARPA money if we don't do this project? It has to be spent by a certain date.
Lynn, do you want me to take the ARPA question? So the ARPA funds have already been allocated for this project, so they're in there for this project or for our town offices. So because it's already been allocated to a project, we will not lose that funding. And it's approximately 1.9 million that we got in ARPA funds. So we won't lose it.
Is that what you were asking?
Even if we turn it down, the money still can be used towards either raising the building or whatever we decide to do with our town offices if we decide to build a different one. It's been allocated towards town offices, so we don't have to give that back as long as it's allocated by a certain date, which it has been.
What was your other question, Anthony?
Line items.
Line items to reduce the...
Oh, I think he's going to, yeah, give it to Tim.
So essentially, that's an effort that we, working with the building committee, are working on right now. It's part of the bid process. We have to build in alternates so that we will get the costs for all of the work, but we put in alternates essentially as a way to not only get individual costs for specific items related to the building, but also if the bid number comes back too high, we can choose amongst ourselves not to accept those alternates. So right now, we are looking at the abatement of the unoccupied portion of the building and the windows on that side as being one of our major alternates, where that cost is approximately 1.2 million, so that we have a cushion built in, working with alternates so that we have ways that once we get the final numbers, we can then bring the costs in line if for some reason they exceed what we expect. As well, we're working diligently with the committee as well as with my design team to take as many cost savings as we can to make sure that the numbers come in lower.
Hi. Lisa Petralia, 6 Common Street again. Should Article 1 fail on April the 8th, and Article 2, which is putting money for the demolition, if we go to demolition, could we use whatever's left of the original 5.6 million, or do you need the extra 2.5 on top of what's left of the 5.6 million? Which is a lot. You have quite a bit of that left.
So you're asking if the demolition costs 2.5 million, can we take that from the 5.9 million? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly.
I would assume so, but I don't know how to answer that question.
I'm not sure exactly.
I don't think the committee can answer that question, but it would make sense because 5.9 million was allocated to the project. What? Well, it would have to go to town meeting to vote.
To change the...
So I
To
just,
change, go ahead.
Sorry, Crystal Dufresne, I live in Taylor Street. I had a question for the assessor's office. Is the average household 357,000 in Granby? Because I think it's a lot higher than that.
No, I do have that here. I have it in the writing. Yeah, go ahead. Sarah.
It says it down at the bottom, 357,000, right? On
That is
what page?
That's the most current letter from December from the
Is it?
assessor's office. That's the
the
median.
average.
That's the median, not the average.
I thought it was a lot higher.
It's right here.
Well, she knows more than I do, obviously. I have a question on the design, only because I can't make heads or tails of the coloring logo of the design. It looks as though the gym that is sitting empty right now and unused is going to be replaced. Is that correct?
No.
With space devoted to others?
No, I think the, looking at the design, the white area is actually the courtyard, but that's pointing towards the gymnasium as a shared space. The courtyard will be available for different functions as well.
Right, my concern is that we maintain the basketball court.
We will,
Yes.
Okay.
That is the upgrade.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that space is going to be maintained. Essentially, what's shown there is just that it's going to be shared and function as multi-purpose space in addition to gymnasium space.
Again, I said I'm here with Brian Hauschild.
Wait, Mr. Hauschild, before you speak, wait 1 second. I just want to clarify for Crystal, for fiscal year '25, the average value for house is $400,007, and the median value is $357,700. So half of Granby will pay, yeah. Yep.
I'm Brian Hauschild. It's fun sitting out here watching you guys get. I sat there for 24 years. So. Anyway, just a question. Why didn't we use those 6 rooms that face West Street for the newest part of the newest edition of the building? Why didn't we use those? I have more to that if you let me.
Yeah, the primary issue why is because those are up a flight of steps. So the portion of the building that we're utilizing, the 22,000 square feet, is all on one level and is the easiest for us to provide and the cheapest for us to provide accessibility to in the current building. It's going to be an issue on the other side of the building in terms of how you access. The other piece of that puzzle is because of how the buildings are stitched together from a code standpoint, egress from that side as well needs to be accessible. You'd have a lot more money that would have to go into reconfiguring that space and providing means to traverse if we went up that flight of stairs.
Thanks. Another question is, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you're going to stick all those old people in a little space, and you're going to end up with a building official and town collector and assessors with big offices?
You guys can work from home.
That just doesn't make sense, That just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
So when you look at the space that you have there, what you're seeing in terms of the senior center portion as marked out there, all that is showing in that lower portion along West Street is the offices alone. So in relation to the current building as it is, it's essentially that wing. It's their spaces for the offices and for the administration and for the food pantry, essentially, the library portion. The other portion, which you can see striped in orange and green, those are all your multi-purpose spaces for all of your classroom, exercise, and function spaces for the COA.
Okay, so you're going to stick them into the cafetorium, which that is, and
the gym, they'll be able to use those spaces. The cafeteria, essentially, as I had stated earlier, is also going to be lined with storage, which will allow for that space to store any of the functions that you need in terms of tables, chairs, etc., for the functions that are happening in those spaces, as well as the capacity to be able to split it into 2 spaces when needed based on the program that's happening there with the folding partition.
We need more private areas. There's private things that go on. Foot care, you're in the middle of
That's in the office space. We do have a space for that specifically.
Anyway, I remember talking to Chris. He was talking about the old cafetorium as being probably a meeting place.
The old what?
The cafeteria.
A meeting place. Special town meetings, anything else that may want to go on. And if you're going to be moving stuff in and out of there, I mean, that's not permanent for them. That's just not permanent. I don't know. I don't like the layout. I was on a committee maybe 10 years ago after I retired from the board. And we did this. And that 1953 wing, that's the wing where you have the officials in right now, okay? I know I was the first class in there in 1953. And then the other wing is the 1957 wing, which I was the first class in that wing. But in any case, we had decided back then that we would put the seniors and let them have every one of those rooms down there. And then what we would do is we put the town hall in the front section. Okay, now we knew that we had steps, but we also knew that we had a lift. We also knew that you can get in from the other side. You gave me another reason why not. Okay?
So the existing lift that's there is no longer code compliant. You cannot put legally one of those style lifts in.
Okay,
So
well, that's not $10 million, so.
Right, it's not, but I'm just saying it's not as easy as putting in one for one.
I just don't, I'll be honest with you, I don't like the layout.
Brian, the other thing we're dealing with is the different buildings and how they were built with fire separation.
Yep.
So we had to cut it off somewhere. And it wasn't just the accessibility, or you're going into another building. Once you get into that building, say we put in an elevator, and we reached down and did a couple more rooms, that means we have to sprinkle it. Not just that area, we have to move further down to the rest of the building for egress out the other side to meet the length requirements, as well as building more firewalls or having to do the rest of the building. So we're already at a budget that is pretty hard to palate right now.
So there's going to be no growth for the senior center is what it comes down to?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying first of all, the space you're getting now is larger than what you have.
It's still not enough.
Thanks, Jim. Good answer.
Thanks, Brian.
Rich Tamaraki, Bachelor Street. Will you shut me off?
Somebody shut him off.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I just want to make a quick comment about, I know you don't want to talk about it, but an option, why isn't an option the high school? Moving, the high school requires a lot of maintenance. You got up to $5 million that you could improve the high school, and you can cover two options at once. You could fix the school for the students, which we constantly have a declining enrollment, and then you could fix it for municipal use.
Rich, we're off topic here.
Yes, that's...
This committee was charged with doing something with the West Street School. If you want to have these discussions about, then take it to town meeting.
That's what I said. It's just
Well,
an option.
Not the town meeting. You guys speak for the board.
Correct. Hello, Gabe Pula, 51 West Street. I'm looking at the blueprint, and I actually agree with Brian Hauschild. I don't think the plan fits what we all thought we were going to get. I think also about a year and a half ago, we all left that meeting knowing that it would be paid for within the $5 million. We all left very happy. The whole gymnasium at East Meadow was very happy. Then the numbers come out triple, 15 are the numbers, and I think everybody's sad about that, and I think it just didn't meet the measure. It's a poor plan, poor planning for cost.
Gabe, we as I explained, wait, hold on, go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to just end with, the one thing we are rich in town with is land, and so I heard somebody earlier talk about building new, and Granby, the one thing we really are rich in is land, so I'll end with that.
Gabe, had you stayed on the committee, you could have helped us with this.
No, stop.
Nope.
Hold on,
Had you
let her
stayed on
finish.
the committee, we would have used your input, which is valuable, because everyone's is valuable. Lynn did explain that the cost increases came from things that we had no way of foretelling. Without money to do a study, which is, we all know we are the town that does studies and doesn't do anything with them, we did the best that we could. Once that money was here and we were able to do it, we did find things that we did not know about. But to say that it's a poor layout, I don't think is fair. It is giving space that department heads said they needed. It is giving more space than they currently have here. It's putting us all into one building. It is taking a building that is currently not on tax rolls and putting it on tax rolls, whatever limited funding that would bring us. It is keeping us from upkeeping a building that we do not own. And better yet, it is putting, I'm going to say one-stop shopping. Right now, if you have a select board issue, you have to come here, and then you want to pay your taxes, you have to drive down the road. The convenience of having us all in the same space for various reasons is something that really needs to be considered. And it's going to be a much safer entrance and exit. West Street is not nearly as busy as 202.
Yes. One of the things that you discussed was the fact how disappointed everybody was from a year and a half ago with the money. Don't you think this committee was just as disappointed?
So-
It was our plan to go see you guys, because we live in this town, we pay taxes like you guys, we wanted this just as much as you guys did. So we're not up here going, oh, we're just gonna do whatever. We were so disappointed when we had to do everything, that's why it was explained, we're just as disappointed as you guys are.
So I just want to thank the committee for all their time and their work. I know, how much time that takes. And for personal reasons, I wasn't able to see that through, unfortunately. But, when we look at the plan and there's a shaded area, it's about 50% of what West Street School really was. I think it's like, what are we really getting for all that money? And
You're getting 22,000 square feet for that money, and the other half of
That's
the
a lot of
building
money,
will be
though.
ready for renovation in the future.
yeah. All right, thanks.
Crystal, there's people up here that have questions.
Okay, Tim was first.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Tim Abbott, 11 Deerbrook Drive. Just curious, I saw it was about $700,000. Sorry, I came in late, so I don't know if I missed this part. That would be due, I guess, on a monthly basis, about $70,000. So, is that right? It
I'm not
says
understanding.
No.
Which one are you talking about?
If you look at the numbers, that's a yearly.
on page 5,
That-
it
that's
says
a-
the approximate annual debt service would be about $709,000.
Annual.
Sure. So about $70,000 a month. I'm just curious, if we were to consolidate everything into West Street, what is our monthly expenditure for rental? And so
We don't-
that's within the $709,000?
Are you referring to what are we paying currently?
Correct.
In order for, yeah, that was down at the beginning. One
Okay.
moment.
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
It's in your spiel?
Yes, that's your, that was
And you're asking for what we're paying monthly for the annex?
council on aging, what we do for
upkeep and renting.
So Lynn, you did how much it costs for this building, how much it costs?
Yeah, hold on, let me find it.
30 and 40 stand out in my head. 1,000.
So for the annex, we currently pay $2,200 a month in rent, $10,000 annually on electricity and heating. Additionally, $9,000 for mowing, trimming, leaf removal, and then some miscellaneous costs for ice melting and snow removal. We pay a weekly custodial fee, which comes out to $8,300 yearly. So in total, we pay for operational expenses and rental, $54,000 for the annex. And then for this building, we pay approximately $49,000 annually in operational expenses like electricity, heat, water monitoring, alarm, pest control, leaf removal. Does that answer your question?
Crystal, George.
In the front.
George, can I come back to you? Sorry, you spoke twice already.
Oh.
George Randall, 52 Taylor. First thing I want to say is thank you all for the effort that you've put in to bring us here tonight. It's taken a considerable amount of time. One thing in your presentation that really impressed me is that you made a comment that we're preparing for our future growth of the town. You're the first committee that's done that, and an example that I will give you is our recent safety complex, is that the day that we moved into that complex, it was outgrown by the police department and outgrown by the fire department. And we're finally moving forward on West Street School. I don't support moving all the offices into the Carnegie Library. It's way too small, facilities aren't there. And this project is not going to be a 1-year or a 2-year project. If you move everybody into the library, I think you're going to cause a huge problem. That's neither here nor there, but I think in the long run, I think we're on the path to recovery.
Go ahead, hand it to next one.
Dennis Houle, 239 Chicopee Street. I'm sitting here, I have a front row seat, and I'm watching the video, and I'm looking at a remarkable building that has plenty of use available. Structurally sound, fairly new roof, windows, we've always had problems with windows. But my point being, we as a town, and I grew up in this town, we never do anything correct. We always Band-Aid every project that we do. We did the West Street, the East Meadow, and I heard as soon as we moved in, there was some restrictions on that. That's okay. We got to a new building. We got our children out of a hazardous environment. That was a positive. We walk through these buildings that we currently have places for office to do business. I had to go to the assessors meeting the other day and contest my tax. But we had the camera there, and the camera was right here in my ear because they have no space to have anyone come in to do business other than the counter. So if you go to contest anything, you're in a sardine can. You go to the tax collector, you go to any office that we have, we don't have adequate space. I understand the senior center is not ideal. I understand the new place is probably not perfectly ideal. It's 1,000% better than what you have here.
It's a starting point.
Exactly. As far as what Brian said with the elevation, and he thought it would be better upstairs. I look at, being a fire person, if we have a situation in the offices, I need egress fast. I don't need to think about it. There's 7 ways to get out of the lower section. If you do anything upstairs, you got 1, you will have 2 with the elevator, but you need more than that. I hate to say it because my taxes went up unbelievable. I think this is the best that we can do for what we're going to do. It's going to solve a current problem. If I understand, if the phone company people are willing to extend the contract, that will give us time to correct and do our renovation as stated. I really think we really need to do this. There's future growth. It's just a good scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, and once again, thanks to all of you, and for everyone in this room. I'm quite certain that most of you don't understand how much more efficient Town Hall will be when all of the offices are under one roof. And I can guarantee that they will be more than 200% more efficient if everybody's under one roof. Thank you. Guarantee. Yeah, guarantee.
Are there more questions?
Rich Domraki. I thought I saw John Libera walk in from the Finance Committee. Could we ask what his opinion is of this project?
I didn't see him walk in.
He's behind him.
He's behind him.
Oh,
Directly behind him.
It's up to John if he'd like to weigh in.
I can tell you, Rich, that we have met with John, and he is behind you, and he's going to say...
I should have looked earlier.
Thanks, Rich. John Libera from the Finance Committee. Finance Committee has not yet met formally on this project. The reason is that although we've seen what you all have seen, the two articles that are, we have not yet heard what the motion is going to be. And without the motion, we're not going to meet yet. The idea there is that we're waiting to hear where the funding is going to come from, what the funding sources are proposed to be. Now, having said that, we have this question about should we do the project, and is the project a good project? And in one sense, I'm certainly agree with Dennis that what this would do for the town government is wonderful. And if you need some proof of that, just go basically into any other surrounding town and look at where they do business. And you'll see how easy it is, how welcoming it is, how easy it is to park, how easy it is to get in and out. And that's certainly desirable for any town to have. What the Finance Committee likes to try to do, and doesn't get a chance that often to do it, is to look at things in a total big picture. We do not have that here. We do not have, and it's clear from what the discussion has been that there is no total picture of what the town needs to do. I mean, just on the surface, we've got these offices spread all around and have been for some time now, and something ought to be done about that. We have a school situation which is, in the long run, untenable. Something is going to have to be done. The Finance Committee thinks, for example, about the school situation that rather than just asking the question, should we build a new high school or should we not build a new high school? Should we renovate the high school or do something different? It should be put into the broader context of what should we do about education of Granby's students. That's the real question. And only after you think about the possibilities for educating Granby students do you then move into the next stage, which is asking, well, what do we do about facilities in order to make that happen? Because if the answer is that some of what we have to do involves other towns, then you get a completely different approach to the problem than if you ask only, what do we do about building more buildings? So what would be nice to have, but unfortunately we do not have, is this total picture of all the things that are happening in the town and the total picture of what it would cost to do everything. I can tell you right this, Granby will not want to afford what it costs to do everything that people would like to have. Building a new high school is not going to work. There is no money, and there's not enough money in Granby's taxpayers' pockets to pay for the building of a new high school. That's just not going to work. But the fact that I say from the Finance Committee that we don't think that that's going to work does not mean that that gives you a total picture of what the town needs are and does not give you a way to fit this project into the rest of the projects. The best you can do right now is say, this project makes sense or it doesn't make sense on its own merits and think about it in that way. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the committee?
So seeing no other questions, we hope to see you come out for the special town meeting on April 7th.
8th.
I'm sorry. I'll be there on April 8th at 7 o'clock. Whatever happens at town meeting, if it gets voted yes, it goes to a debt exclusion vote, which I believe will be on May 19th. If it gets voted down, then that'll be the end of this project, and we have to decide what to do with West Street.
And it's at East Meadow.
Yes.
Yeah.
town meetings at East Meadow.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That was a lot of work.